Well, hey guys, it's Ryan. Senators, just wanted to give a quick uh, video training for all of us in regards to diabetes. For those of you guys who don't know, Ohana is one of the few homes within the state that specializes with complex medical issues. What DCS says is we are a medically fragile home. So it's not going to be uncommon for us to have kiddos with different medical needs like G tubes or diabetes or seizures. The most common that we're going to see, and that we have a couple in our homes right now, are kids with diabetes. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of what is diabetes and then how are you going to manage it in the house. So quick kind of big narrative about what is diabetes. There are two types of diabetes. There's type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is the less common version. That type of diabetes is for typically is also known as childhood diabetes, where a person gets it when they're a kid. I myself am a type 1 diabetic, so I'm pretty familiar with it. I was diagnosed when I was had diabetes at 18, so a little bit later in life, and I've had it for almost 20 years at this point. So I have walked through it. I've been hospitalized, lots of our kids in our homes, because of it, and have had to learn how to really get it under control and manage it for myself. Because if we don't manage the diabetes, they will die. Um, they can die much younger, heart disease, have a heart attack. They can lose limbs. They can lose their vision. It's not a pretty thing. So we type 1 diabetics, the difference between type 1 type 1 is their body. There is an organ in our body called the pancreas. The pancreas, one of their primary roles is to produce insulin. Insulin is a hormone in the body that helps take glucose, which is after we consume food and carbohydrates or sugar, our body turns that sugar into glucose, and that glucose is energy for our body. Very important. The glucose, the role of the insulin, the hormone, is to help get the glucose out of the body and into the cell. Type 1 diabetics, they do not produce any insulin at all. So they have to take injections, they have to take shots to get that insulin in their body or have a pump. Type 2 diabetics their body still produces insulin, what they know as insulin resistant. Insulin resistant is the fact that they have their body produces it. It's typically more genetic and health related, so it can be poor diet and exercise, and their body is just more resistant to insulin. But with proper medication, diet, exercise, that can be reversed. If I have a little, let me share this with you. If you take a look here, I have a picture kind of represents what a healthy pancreas, these little green dots are what we call insulin, and this is the glucose. And the job of this insulin is to get these glucose into cells, okay? If you take a look down here. The issue here with the diabetic, especially type 1s, there's no insulin to move this glucose into cells. So if you have no glucose in your cells start to die off. They become very lethargic. You're very tired because glucose is the energy that helps bring the insulin is what brings the energy into the cells. So in order to manage your diabetes, you have to take shots and you have to be able to get insulin into those cells that need be. There are lots of things in regards to how do you manage this. I'm going to give you two different screens here to kind of represent us, and you're probably familiar with that. One of the things that you're going to learn really, really quickly is diabetics have to take, if you take a look in the corner, they are going to have to monitor their blood sugar with some type of meter. I check my blood sugar about 8 times a day. For type 1 diabetics, we have to do this all the time. The reason being is because we don't know what our blood sugar is at most times, and we need to give ourselves insulin or take some sort of glucose or carbohydrate to help balance us out. So it's really vital. Your kids in your homes if will have a pouch. You do not let them leave the house without this. They need to learn to take responsibility for this, and we need to they need to bring this wherever they go, or an adult has it with them. So they're checking their blood sugar. This meter will help. If you look over here on this side right here, it will help give you your blood sugar. Your blood sugar ranges can go from 40 to 500. If you take a look at this table here, the typical range, if you look in the excellent range, is about 80 to about 120. That's an excellent range of blood sugar. Most of you who are not diabetic, that's where your blood sugar will sit. For a diabetic, their pancreas isn't working well. So there's two things that can happen. One on the left side is called hyperglycemia. Hyperglycemia is where your blood sugar gets too low. You have too much insulin. So what happens if you have a blood sugar under 180, and take a look here, the signs of that is pretty significant. Anyone who has a low blood sugar, what you're going to start to see is the kid starts to get really lethargic, or they get confused. When my blood sugar is low, I'm pretty angry, I'm frustrated. My wife was like, hey, you need to go check your sugar because I'm just moody and I just can't control it. I start to sweat and my hands start to shake. That's the telltale sign. So if you have a kid in your home, they're pale, they're sweating, they're not necessarily fully conscious, they look confused, or they're frustrated, or they're really tired, that could be a sign that they have a low blood sugar, and you need them to go get their tester and check their blood sugar. If they are low, okay, if they have a blood sugar below 80, you need to then have them go take some sort of consume some sort of sugar. I'm talking about fast-acting sugar like Gatorade, not the sugar-free Gatorade, regular Gatorade, orange juice, a Coke, a half a can of Coke, not the whole thing, glucose tablets, okay, those types of things. Take something that can help raise up their blood sugar just a bit. What I don't want them to do is chug a whole can of Coke or a bunch of orange juice, because what will happen is their body will then it'll swoop really high really quickly, and then it feels like they're on a roller coaster with their blood sugar. So they need just about like 4 ounces of a drink to be able to get it up, and then retest their blood sugar in 15 minutes. So you have them test their blood sugar. If they're low, you give them 4 ounces of soda or some type of glucose tablets, and then retest in 15 minutes. If they're still low, give them a little bit, like another 4 ounces of some sort of juice or something. On the flip side, if they get really high, this is where a lot of damage of your body can go in. It's not gonna, I'm sorry, let me step back. If you're low, what can happen is that if you get so low, you can go unconscious. So if you come to a kid, this should never happen in our homes, but God forbid, they take too much insulin and they're not waking up, they're pale. Check their blood sugar. If it's low, if it's below 80 and you can't wake them up, I need you to then give them some sort of, you can put little sugar under their lips. You can attempt to give them some kind of orange juice. And then if that doesn't work, every kid has a emergency pen. It's in a red little case, and that is to help when they're really low. You inject it into them and it helps to raise their blood sugar. Okay, on the flip side, if someone is really high of hyperglycemia, okay, high blood sugar is anything above 180. If type 1 diabetics, you can see 200, 300, 400. If it's above the 200, you need to be concerned and they need to make adjustments, okay? If their blood sugar is really high, what they need to do is, in this case, what it looks like, signs of that is a kid can be really thirsty. Kid who has and have to urinate frequently. I know when I had really high blood sugars in the 600s for weeks and I never knew. I ended up in the hospital, but my eyes were blurry because the blood sugar, the glucose was covering my eyes. I was really tired. I was urinating all the time and thirsty. Those are telltale signs. If our kids are doing that, we need to be mindful. So if your blood sugar is above 180 to 200, they need to take a correction shot. They need to take their insulin, and whatever the doctor has prescribed their ratio of insulin to carbohydrates or their correction shot to be, you need to do it. This comes in regards to some math of how this works. I'm going to kind of break this down. Generally, this is an example of one kiddo's blood blood sugar in, let me find it here. Here is an example of one kiddo's routine in our homes. Every kid is going to be a little bit different, but generally this is what it is. This is a good rule of thumb. Okay, number one is that every diabetic, when the moment they wake up, they need to take their blood sugar. BS stands for blood sugar in the morning. And then if it's their blood sugar is high, they need to give themselves a correction shot. They're always going to write down their blood sugar. Okay, we have a log that we are asking us to start to follow. Okay, here's your log. It gives you by date of the, so we put the month, say it's February. You put the person's name and the date that it is, and you have different columns. When they wake up, what time do they wake up? It's the first of the month. What was their blood sugar, their blood glucose? You write that down, okay? If their glucose was high, you give them a correction shot. Then the time. This is the breakfast, lunch, and dinner, okay? So what time was it? And then before breakfast, you always check the blood sugar before you eat. Then you figure out how many carbohydrates you're eating, and then you take that much blood insulin that you need. And then 2 hours after, you're going to check the blood sugar again. So before, and then 2 hours after, you're going to monitor it again. And then lastly, before they go to bed, they need to check their blood sugar again. So you're going to fill this out and keep track of it. And generally, here's what we're looking for. We need to test before bed, and then they're going to take the Lantus shot. So they have an insulin they take at night. It's long lasting. It's a different type of insulin. So just make sure they always get that every single night. If before they eat, they're going to test their blood sugar before they eat. Say, for example, their blood sugar is 200, okay? They need to take a certain amount of insulin to get from 200 to 120, okay? So what they're going to do, if you take a look here, there's a correction formula that they compute. And for most kids, it's going to be the blood sugar, what their number is, minus 150 divided by 25, okay? So for example, let's think, for example, say a kid wakes up and his number is 225 or 225, yeah. And then he'll subtract his range of 150, okay, and then divide it by 25. This is where you got to get out your old school math, get out your calculator. And if I did 225 minus 150 divided by 25, that gives me an answer of 3. So I would need to take 3 units of insulin when I woke up, okay? And then if I'm going to eat breakfast, I would need to give myself the number of units per carbohydrate, okay? So every person is going to have a number of units of insulin they have per carbohydrates. So for this example, it's a 1 to 8. So a kid says he's going to go make a bowl of cereal. Okay, a bowl of cereal is not great for kids who are diabetic, but say they do it. What you need to be mindful of is that kids and anyone, we tend to underestimate how many carbs are in a meal. So they need to actually look at the ingredients and see how many carbs are on there and measure out how many servings they're going to have. So example, I would work with one of our kids in our homes, and they pour themselves a huge bowl of cereal. And they said, oh, it's 40 carbs. And in fact, that's not even close. When we actually filled up the bowl and measured out, it was like 8 scoops of cereal. And that was like 200 carbs, okay? Maybe I'm exaggerating, but you get the point. Is the number of carbohydrates, you need to be very accurate. So you need the kids to prepackaged foods are always good because you can see exactly on the label how many carbs. So say a kid has a glass of milk, that's 8 carbs, has some eggs, that's maybe 2 carbs an egg, and then 2 slices of bread, that's about 20 carbs. So he has about 32 carbs for that meal. So he computes that he has 32 carbs, okay, and he has 1 unit of insulin per 8. So he takes 28 carbs divided by 8, and that would tell me how many units of insulin I would need to take, which is 4 units, okay? So this kiddo in the morning, he's gonna eat this certain breakfast, so he needs 4 units plus the 3 units of correction, so he needs to take a shot of 7 units of insulin, okay? So he eats, and then always 2 hours after eating, you're gonna have your kiddo take his blood sugar again, okay? So, and you're gonna fill out that paper, the log, after 2 hours after right here. All right. So I know this is a lot. I'm going to also give this to you again. If low, here's some directions here. You drink a small amount of juice or 4 glucose tabs, retest 15 minutes later. Don't drink a whole thing of Gatorade or a bowl of cereal. It'll make your blood sugar high within 30 minutes. If above 180, you're going to take that correction formula. Okay. So that's some general cliff notes. In the home, your house manager or myself can show you the different aspects of the meter, how that works, where the sharps are. You need to make sure that you're putting the sharps in a sharp container after it's used. The kid should be able to give himself the insulin if they're able to, but they need to always making sure they're testing their blood sugar, taking the correction shots. And one thing is kids will sometimes try to sneak food. You need to just watch them like a hawk, and they need to be serious about like how many carbs they're eating. So this is a lot of the life training that it's working with a diabetic. It's them taking it seriously, because diabetics who are not controlled die at age 40, and we don't want that for our kids. We want them to live a long life, but they need to take ownership of this disease, and they can live a fine life if they learn how to kind of manage it. So, and they also need to learn how to count carbohydrates correctly. And that's a difficult thing. And sometimes it's just lazy and I don't want to do it. And they guess, and the guess is typically wrong. So you need to work with them on asking how many carbohydrates it is, making sure they're taking the right amount of insulin. And then from there, it's just kind of a process. It's never perfect, but it is doable. So reach out with any questions. There's your tutorial on the basics of diabetes.